To maximize solar collection for the least amount of money, I look for ways to save on the charge controller without giving up performance. Let me show you how I did it. This video builds on the previous one where I discussed solar panel selection. I'll put a link to it in the description, but you don't need to see it before you see this one. All you need to know is that I started by figuring out what panels I was going to use and how I would connect them together. I also knew I would be installing a 12-volt battery bank, so the charge controller was the last major component to select. With the array configured, I'm ready to select a charge controller. There are a lot out there to choose from, so to narrow it down, I need to understand what the key factors influencing controller selection are. They are the highest voltage the solar array will produce and the highest current the controller would ever send to the batteries. Cold solar panels output higher voltage, so when I correct for the coldest temperature I think my array will ever be exposed to, I end up with a maximum array voltage of 108.4 volts. Any charge controller used with this array must have a max voltage rating above that, or it will be damaged by the array. The next aspect to consider in selecting a charge controller is its output current limit. The solar array is rated for 1240 watts, and I'm using a bank of flooded lead-acid batteries that's normally 12.8 volts. Assuming worst-case charging voltage of 12.5 volts, the charge controller would need to output as much as 99.2 amps. A charge controller with output current lower than this won't be damaged by the array, but it could leave some available power unused. I could stop here and only consider charge controllers with specifications that exceed these numbers, but I was looking for opportunities to lower cost. Does it make sense to save a couple $100 by using a charge controller with ratings below these peak values? If the solar array ever produces a voltage higher than the controller is rated to withstand, it's fair to expect that the controller would be permanently damaged, so I'm not going to violate that limit. But the output current is managed by the charge controller, so the risk isn't damage to the controller, the risk is that you leave some power available from the solar panels unused. Now my solar array can produce 1240 watts under ideal conditions, that is high noon with the panels pointed right at the sun. But my installation would never be ideal, so how much power should I expect to get from them? To figure this out, I took a closer look at losses in the system. Since my panels would be mounted flat on the roof, I assumed losses due to tilt would be the biggest factor affecting total power production. Before I get into how I determined this, let me start by demonstrating the effect with a simple model. To help demonstrate what I'm talking about, I have a ray tracing tool that I have set up with a bunch of rays that are being shot at this solar panel that I have set up to be the 310 watt solar panels that I use. And then back here, this black rectangle here is a backstop for any rays that miss the solar panel will fly past and hit this backstop. So right now, because I have it perpendicular and I have the ray source set up to be the same size as the panel, all of the rays that are being launched are being actually hit by or landing on the solar panel that I have there. Now I can also show this and basically I have the same thing. This is a 3D model and this side is the 2D model. So I also can show this, I can show the rays that actually hit each of these different surfaces on some detectors. So let me clear the detectors. So I have this set up so it's going to shoot a million rays at the detector, and then it'll show which one got what rays. So I'll go ahead and I cleared the detectors and I'll hit trace. So I want to exit that. Now you can see that this one right here is the solar panel, and each time a ray hits it, it brightens up one of the pixels a little bit, so you can see it pretty uniformly captured all the rays, and the backstop got none of them. The other thing I want to point out is that the power that was collected, so I'm modeling I have this set up to sort of spoof the power levels, but you can see I have this capturing 310 watts, so that's 3.1 times 10 to the 2, which is 310 watts, and the backstop has got no power. So now we'll switch back and take a look at this again, and then the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the tilt of the solar panel to 30 degrees, and then I'll update all of this stuff. So here you can see that some of the rays are starting to bypass the panel, so I'm not catching 100% of the power that was available because of this tilt offset. So once again, I can pull these viewers up. I'll clear the detectors and then hit trace. Now you can see on the backstop it caught some of the top and bottom, and that means that it missed some of this. So now we're down with the 30-degree tilt. That 310 watt panel is down to 268 watts. So let's try that one more time. Let's just do one more time. So I'm going to up this to 85 degrees. So now update all the views. Now you can see it's severely tilted, so there's not a whole lot that's going to be hitting the panel. Most of it's going to be missing it and hitting the backstop. I'll go ahead and clear these viewers. Let's see, where am I at? There it is, right there. Clear the detectors, and I'll trace that again. So now you can see it only blocked the solar panel. You can see it's a little bit, it's not quite as bright. It didn't have as many rays actually land on it. You can see by the density difference between what hit the backstop and what hit actually the solar panel. And now you can see we're down to actually 27 watts. So it's 2.7 times 10 to the 1, which is 27 watts. So most of it, right, we're at like 9% of total. Now I'm about to get into the impact of latitude and solar declination. So if you're a flat earther, this would be a good time for you to resume your natural resting state for a while. Okay, now I have a different model to show you where I've actually modeled essentially the Earth, right? So the Earth is here, and then I've got the axis, so you can tell where the South and the North Pole are. So if you zoomed in real close, I didn't model Santa, but he would be right up here. I did, however, model a ginormous solar panel that is going to be basically facing towards the sun. So you can see that guy right there. And then I have his detector right there. So I'm going to move that back, get it aligned, and then we'll zoom back out. I'll also turn on, so now that you can see where it's at, I will go ahead and turn on some rays that about 200, and we'll update it, and I'll have to zoom back out. So I've got rays essentially launching from the sun. These are all the rays that could possibly hit the Earth, right? So anything else would just go past it, so we don't care about those. But I'll zoom back in, and you can see my solar panel is still right there, right in the middle. So I know it's way not to scale, but that's okay. I've also changed some of the other parameters on this model so that it'll capture like the equivalent amount of power off of the sun. So the view of the Earth that we have right now, with the pole kind of going straight up and down, this would be either the spring or the fall equinox. Currently I have the solar panel on the equator, right? So it's at 0 degrees, so it's perpendicular to the sunlight rays that are coming in. I have a few more analysis rays because a whole lot are going to be hitting the other parts of the Earth. Very few are going to be hitting the panel, so I've got to use a few more in order to get a view of it. But we'll take a look at this. We will clear the detector and then trace. So it takes a while longer to do 100 million rays than it does a million. So I'm going to exit that. But I'll point something out here. So on fall or summer equinox, on the equator, you've basically got a panel that's flat mounted on the ground. You would have it perpendicular to the rays of the sun. In this case, I've got this again set up so that I register a power of 3.096 times 10 to the 2, so basically 310 watts. It's getting all the power. So the next thing I'm going to do is make an adjustment to the tilt. We're going to basically change the latitude. Let's go to Tucson, Arizona. So we'll go 32 degrees. Now I'll update, and I better turn the rays off so that you can see this. Okay, so now you can see our solar panel is right here. It's we're starting to move up the curvature of the Earth. Now I'm at 32 degrees latitude in Tucson, Arizona. And let's take a look. So it's still fall. Put these rays back in here. Update all. It's still fall, but we've just moved from the equator up to Tucson, Arizona. So I'll clear the detectors and we'll run that ray trace again and see what it comes up with. So just finished doing the ray trace, and you can see we've dropped now to 262 times 10 to the 2 watts, 261.7, so it's 261.7 watts that are now landing on this. So same setup, I've just moved up in latitude. So we'll do the same thing again, fall in Ely, Minnesota. So this is far north as, I think this is far north as we traveled this year. So I will change again. That's 48 degrees latitude. I won't, well, update all. I'll just zoom in, and there you go. Now it's all the way up here. So it's up here, it was down there before. And let's rerun our ray trace. So we'll clear out the old one and let it run again. Okay, so I'll exit out of there. So now we are down to 208 watts. So by traveling north, I'm increasing the tilt, the kind of the offset tilt to the rays of the sun, and I'm losing more and more power. This is essentially having, again, the solar panel laying flat, oriented flat to the ground on Earth in a particular location. So the next thing that we're going to do is model the effect of summer and winter. So the first thing we'll do is basically, let's make it summer in the northern hemisphere. So I'm going to make the tilt minus 23.45. That's the tilt of the Earth, and we'll update everything. Okay, so this is the normal tilt of the Earth, and that's what it looks like with the sun extending to the left side. I'll turn the rays back on. With the sun off to the left, that's what how it looks when the Earth is tilting towards us. So you can see now we've got the northern hemisphere pointing a lot closer to the sun. And then if I look at Ely, Minnesota, so I'm still at 48 degrees latitude with my solar panel, but you can see that it's not terribly off. That is how far off from perpendicular it is. So let's rerun that. So before, at fall in Ely, Minnesota, we were 208 watts. But in summer, let's rerun it and see what we get. So I'm going to clear the detector and we'll trace it. Okay, just finished tracing. And we went up to from 208 to 283. So that's the effect of being in summer. So it's also not that far off from the 310 that solar panel is rated for. So let's do the same thing. Now we'll move it down to Tucson, and we'll go 32 degrees. So updating this model, the solar panel moved from about here. Now it's here, and you can see it's awfully close to being perpendicular. So let's rerun the ray trace. Clear the detector again. Okay, so I'll exit out of there, and now we're up at 309, so we're basically almost up at full power. So it's so close, we're so close now to being perpendicular that it's basically running at full power. This is with no tilt. Again, this is just the solar panel laying flat on the ground or flat on the roof of a vehicle. Now I'm going to make another change. So now I will change the tilt of the Earth, make it positive 23.45 degrees, and update. Now this is what winter looks like. The northern hemisphere, well, winter in the northern hemisphere anyway. The northern hemisphere is now facing away from the sun. It's kind of pointing up away from the sun. So those rays, and now notice I haven't changed the location of the solar panel. It's still in Tucson. I still have it at 32 degrees. But now it kind of looks like the solar panel did in Ely at fall. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the detectors and we'll trace that. Okay, just finished tracing, and you can see now our power is 175 watts. So that 310 watt panel in the summer is getting just about all the power that it's capable of. It's awfully close to STC when we're in Tucson in the middle of summer. But being in Tucson in the middle of winter, we're not quite half.
I showed this with a ray tracing tool because I thought it would give you a better feel for what's really going on. But you already have a better, more accurate tool to figure out the same thing. Going back to the first model, you can see that the shape of the shadow is a right triangle, which means that we can use a trig function on your phone or computer calculator to determine loss with higher precision than the ray tracer did using 10 million rays.
Now I'm going to drop this to 10 million. I'm going to drop this to 10 million rays to speed up the analysis a little bit, and I'll show you how the calculator is actually a little faster at this. So what I'm going to do first is we're still winter oriented. The Earth is oriented for winter in the northern hemisphere, and we are currently in Tucson, so I'm going to instead move us up to the 42nd latitude. This is like Chicago. So I'll update the model. You can see right now that's Tucson, and we'll update it, and the panel just moved further north. So now I'm going to go ahead and clear the detectors and trace that. So it's done, and it's come up with 130 watts. So that's how much power the ray tracers determined that our 310 watt panel is receiving up in Chicago in the middle of winter. So I'm going to pick up our calculator. So any calculator, probably most calculators on phone or the computer will do this. I'm going to switch it to scientific mode, and then I'll do a few things. First off, I'm going to take the latitude that I'm currently at. So in Chicago, that's 42 degrees, and because it's winter, I'm going to add the 23.45 degrees, because that moved it even further kind of up the curvature of the Earth. And then I'll use the trigonometry function cosine on that. We've got 0.415 and multiply that by the power of my particular panel. For me, it's 310 watts. And the answer comes up to 128.8. So that's actually more accurate than the ray tracers. So the ray tracers based this analysis on here. Actually, I can even redo it, and you'll see that it's going to change again every time I do it. So this time it came up 125.9. If I clear it and try it again, now it's 129.7. So it's going to be there's a little random error that happens with the ray tracer, but every time I make the calculation using the trig function cosine, it's going to come up with 128. Last thing I'll do is we'll change from winter to summer but we'll keep the panel in Chicago. So I'm going to change this to minus 23.45 because I want to tilt it towards the sun now. And I'll update that. You can still just barely see the panel right there. And I'll go ahead and clear the detectors and trace. So now it says we're coming up with about 293 watts on the panel. So let's pull this guy back up. We'll do that again. 42 minus 23.45, because now summer is pointing us more towards the sun. So we end up with a net 18.55 degrees off of the perpendicular. So that cosine gives us 0.94, and I'll multiply that by the 310 watts again. And you can see 293 there, 292.4. So again, very close. Two tools doing the same thing, but the calculator that already comes with your smartphone and with your computer can do the same work more accurately.
For flat-mounted solar panels, the tilt losses are lowest at summer solstice, so this will define the maximum capacity for the charge controller. Assuming we're around 48 degrees of latitude at that time of year, the minimum tilt loss we'll see is 9%. I'll also assume losses for production tolerance, panel mismatch, connectors, wires, and dust. Given these numbers, the highest performance I expect out of the array is 83.9% of STC, or about 1040 watts. Assuming lowest charging voltage of 12.5 volts, The charge controller would need to output at least 83.2 amps to take full advantage of the power from the array. This was close enough for me, so I decided to use the less expensive 80 amp solar charge controller. And so far, I haven't seen it limit the output at 80 amps because the charge voltage is usually closer to the mid 13 volt range.
I hope you have a better understanding of how tilt offset can impact the performance of a solar system. By considering the specifics of your install, you may find a less expensive option that still provides reliable performance. If it seems like too much trouble to duplicate what I've done, that's okay. You can stop analyzing once you've determined the peak voltage and current and take comfort in the fact that your system will have more design margin than mine does. If you're still watching but you hated this video, damn, I guess self-flagellation's your kink. Hey, I don't judge. Hit the subscribe button for more punishment.